All right, here we go. So go ahead. I'm sorry, Jordan, in regards to the demos and the work you guys did this week.
Oh yeah, no worries. Yeah, just so we had one issue this week, but we actually paired separately and tackled the issue with like two different branches. So
Okay.
I guess if we want to share the code and whatnot, like maybe I can do it for myself and Fatima, and then Mandy can share on her branch. But and that was like one thing. Oh yeah.
Can you clarify what you mean by you split it on two branches, meaning you split the work of that one issue, or?
Exactly. So we kind of split this one issue into 6 different like subtasks, and each branch kind of took on like 3 or 4 of them.
Okay.
Separately. Yeah. And then with that, we were kind of like looking for guidance too on like how we should proceed. Should we put it all into like one PR, or can we do like 2 PRs for one issue? We weren't really sure how to kind of merge this into main, but we do have 2 different branches that hopefully work together.
Yeah. Are they demoable, as in like, can you show a deploy preview for each of those branches, or is it mainly like you need both of them together to actually show the deploy preview?
We should be able to, we can definitely share. Mandy and I met up before this meeting and we shared both of our sides together. Awesome. So should be fine.
Cool. Yeah, our individual subtasks like work, but awesome. To meet the general acceptance criteria, it'd be better, obviously, if they were under one umbrella.
Yeah,
but they're not dependent on each other to show the bits that we worked on.
Cool. Well, why don't we do the demos and then maybe we can give guidance afterwards? How's that sound, mentors?
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Mandy, any preference? You want me to go first, or you? Or
either way is fine. I think yours logically starts the way the acceptance criteria are written.
That's true. Okay, so yeah, I'll go for it. And so this is my first demo. Do you want me to just show the application first and then walk through the code, or was there any preference on how that works?
It's really up to you how you'd like to present it.
Okay, cool.
Can I convince you to start with the acceptance criteria so we know what we're looking for?
Sure. Yeah, let's go for it. So, all right, so issue number 5, so when a user does not already have a token in local storage, onboarding home screen, it shows a simple form is displayed that allows the user to enter a token. Entering the token and hitting submit saves the token to local storage, effectively giving them joint control of the list. And on submit, show an error if the token does not exist. And lastly, if they get an error message, allow them to try again or create a new list. So here's like the subtask that we kind of split this into. And so for Fatima and myself, branches, we created the form to input token on the home page. So I'll show this first. I'll clear the data. Okay, so here's our form and just like a submit button. Create a handle submit function to save the token to local storage. So I can walk through the code after this, but basically after a user submits the token, redirect to the list view. Grab a token real quick. So enter the token here, token, and it redirects to the list view. And okay, so if a token does not match any token of any of the items like within the database, display an error message. I have that one on this branch as well. So clear the site data, go back, and just do like test. So we get like a little error alert. And then let's see. I think that was it for mine, but and then the last thing is it just clears it again. So then we can like submit a new token.
Great.
Cool. So,
oh, sorry, quick question.
Yeah,
Does the token exist in local storage? Like I assume it does. I just wanted to see it.
it does. Trying to think if we have it. So let's do this one. So yeah, here's our console log showing like the local storage
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
token. So
Nice.
And if you clear the data and you try to go directly to the list URL, are you allowed to?
let's see. So this is actually taken care on Mandy's.
Okay.
So right now on my branch, I have the logic that like it displays everything that's in the database. So yeah, we do see everything in the database still, but Mandy's has the querying like filter that will like take care of that. So
Yeah, we have a redirect set up if no token exists.
Awesome.
cool. Hey Fatima.
Hey, Fatima.
So I'm just showing our code now. Okay, so to get into the code side of things. So we built out the token form component. This is where we're just like, just rendering the input form and then having like the submit button next to it. And within our like handle submit, we're taking in, the input as the event, saving that as the token. And then we are querying the database here for that token that we are inputting. And then we're awaiting to get back the result. Here, it's just an if else statement that if like that query snapshot has a length, then it will submit that to our local storage or submit that token to the local storage. And else it will like have that alert that says this error does not exist. And then this resets the form so that you can like input a new token.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah,
Awesome,
so
nice
I
work.
think, yeah, thank you. I don't know, Fatima, if you had anything else that you wanted to.
You explained it really well. Just wanted to like note that like there's some cleaning up we have to do still. So like the console log, and then on line 16, we would pass in that token variable instead of the e.target.
All right, yeah,
Yeah, but that's something that we can do later.
cool.
And sorry, do you mind reminding me of the database structure again? So you're attaching a list item with a token, right? So you won't ever get to a point where you can have 0 list items. Okay, awesome. See you right there. Perfect. Cool. That makes sense then. Yep.
Yes, we have our user token on each one.
Cool. Nice.
All right.
Cool, cool. All right, so I'll stop sharing and pass it over.
Good work.
Thank you.
All right, so nice demo. We go back to our little list of subtasks. So for our part, we were dealing with sorting the database responses so that only items were returned if they contain the correct user token, instead of returning all of the items in the database. Which is this function essentially. We're just modifying it. So we added a query that sorted or responded only to the items that matched the shared token. And then I also added a title just to make it a little bit simpler for us to see which token we're actually viewing in the app itself. So here, we're displaying only items for this user token. But if we were to switch over to another token, refresh, you'll see that it will change over. There are the items. And then let's see what's next on our list here. We also took care of redirecting based on whether a token exists or not, which we did in the app.js file. We basically just entered this ternary operator to redirect if the token doesn't exist yet. So if I go back, we can see that if I'm on this page, well, you should never be able to make it to this page if you don't have a token set. So if I delete the token and refresh, we'll be redirected. And if I try to click on either of the nav links down here, it will not allow it. If I add a token back, then I can switch back and forth. I'll get a refresh. So I can switch between the list and add item view. And I can't remember exactly what happened, but I feel like before when we added a list item, you were automatically redirected to the list view. So we did modify something to make that not happen. Shalom and I did, but I can't remember exactly how we changed it. But nonetheless, when you are on the list view, or I'm sorry, on the add item view, you can stay and add multiple items without being redirected. We get a little alert now too to show that a new item has been added. So
Awesome.
So did you also add the last purchase date, the optional field? And
so we
sorry,
can add it. Yeah, we can add it, but it's meant to be optional per previous story. So it's meant to be able to be left null. But I think in the future, what we'd probably want to do is add there's something called a server timestamp method you can use from Firestore that will automatically generate a timestamp. And maybe we would want to consider using that, but if you look in the database, it can be left null.
Mm-hmm.
But as of now, it's not very structured. So I could probably put October 12th as the last purchase date. And it actually there's not a lot of preventative measures to actually check the form at this time, but those were also not required.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably something that you're going to have to consider and possibly adjust, because as you move later into the application, you'll be utilizing a last purchase date for calculation purposes. Yeah,
I agree. I think the server's timestamp would work, but I'm also not sure exactly what kind of a date picker we would want to integrate with it. Or if we want to avoid doing that altogether, if there's some way to modify or just feed that server timestamp method the correct format of information from a user. I don't know.
Maybe you might have to enforce a format.
But yeah, I agree that definitely needs to happen, because otherwise sorting will be difficult, and updating that time field won't be possible if we don't fix it.
One of the nice things about a date picker is that it doesn't have a kind of generic text input field. And then you can enforce the format that way.
Mhm.
That is nice. That way you don't have to worry about all the edge cases of what people could try to type into your field and checking out the right values and right structures.
I think
Not that we
Jordan
need to use one,
mentioned.
but just food for thought.
Yeah, I think Jordan found one that we were considering using in the future. I don't remember what it was called though.
Yeah, I've worked with like Moment.js, but I think that's just like a date library. I don't know if they have like the actual date pickers on it, but something we'll definitely look into for sure.
Mm-hmm.
If I mean, worst case, as long as you like, you can put in your placeholder, like the format you're looking for, and then at the back end, you can process that format to anything you need within your own date library that you choose, or maybe even the server timestamp something. So, you know, that it does, a date picker is nice because then you just kind of abstracts that away. But again, if you just place what you're looking for in your ARIA label and in your placeholder, then the user can just, you know, make sure they give you the format you need. Yeah,
it really should just be like probably a month and day and year. I don't think it needs to be any more specific.
I mean, and for the sake of argument, the last team that I worked with, they just, if you were adding an item, it was assumed that the last purchase date was null and that the app would learn over time. I do kind of like that the user has control of saying, oh, I bought this last week, to go ahead and let the algorithm start doing its work. But you could also just not have it.
Yeah, like I said, the way
if
I
it
read
gets to be too much or too wieldy, like that's an option.
Yeah, the way I read like the previous story for that was just that it should accept null. It didn't also say it should just put the current date in.
Yeah.
So maybe I did not interpret that correctly.
I think it's just ensuring that you account for the fact that the value will likely be null or could be null. But yeah.
I also had a question for both teams, which was kind of, what was your testing protocol like? What things were you looking for? What edge cases were you trying to catch? How did you validate that you've actually hit all the right acceptance criteria?
It's a good question. I think just like starting off, we kind of like as a team kind of divided everything into that subtask list. So we were trying to like just think of like the best ways to tackle all the acceptance criteria, you know. But yeah, it's a good question. I guess like during development, maybe just like trial and error type stuff. But I guess we weren't using like testing frameworks, if that's part of the question.
That's not what I was asking about. More like, for instance, to give a concrete example, one of Mandy's criteria was that, you know, if you have a token, you should only be able to access the items for that list. And if you have a different token, you shouldn't be able to access that. So how did you go about testing the uniqueness of those items to those different lists? And how did you test to make sure they didn't kind of cross-pollinate?
That's a good question. I basically was just using, you know, fake tokens and to test that query, like would it accept that? And that is probably one of the edge cases we need to take care of in the future. Is you can enter, or at least previously, you could enter a fake token and it would take you to an empty list because Firestore interpreted that as, oh, you're entering a new item. But I think that the fix, because I ended up, that's what we were working on yesterday. I had to step out, but Jordan and Fatima figured out how to test for the token instead of like adding a new token if a fake one was added. So, but yeah, I guess to answer your question, I basically was just using the console to set a token and see what would come back. And we set up 2 different tokens with different list items so that we could verify that only the correct items are coming back.
The only reason I really bring it up is that for reviewers, for yourselves and for us, one thing that's really useful often is to have a set of like testing steps. So then you can say, hey, here's how you can go about testing this MR to make sure that it actually does all the right things. And that does two things. One, it just helps your reviewer do it a little faster. And two, helps to show that you've covered all the different bases and all the different edge cases. So when putting up an MR, that's often something that's really helpful beyond just the straight acceptance criteria, saying, hey, here's all the different things that I looked for.
I can kind of see us like kind of adding that to our process, because like we separated, we looked at all the acceptance criterias and then separated it into subtasks. And then I can see us like kind of just for each subtask adding kind of a testing, also adding a testing criteria to each one of those.
Yeah, I love how you guys already split those out and did it all. And I love that you're using the issues to make comments and checklists. So this is great. Yeah, there's always more you can write.
And also that's also when you're reviewing the other half's code, the code you didn't directly work on, it's always really great to think outside of the acceptance criteria, such as what happens if I go to the ad directly? What happens if I go to, do this? Or what happens if I put this in? Or, because when you're developing, it's really easy to get focused just in on what I'm trying to accomplish. And those edge cases don't always come into your purview. And so it's really nice when a reviewer can kind of pull themselves back and say, here's these other things that we should probably check for. And oftentimes, you'll get a comment or a review, statement saying, oh, when I did this, this broke, or when I did that, it went over here and it's not supposed to. And you're like, oh, didn't even realize that was going to happen.
Yeah, and sometimes the acceptance criteria doesn't cover that either. Like it doesn't cover all edge cases. So you kind of need to like think outside the box a little bit to like see where those edge cases lie.
Yeah, make the general argument that acceptance criteria can be quite broad, but your testing criteria should be fairly concise or very specific. So like saying, hey, when I go to this page, I'm able to get in. Great. Well, the testing criteria is like, okay, are you able to navigate to this page? Okay. When I navigate to this page with a token, it loads. When I navigate to this page without a token, I get redirected. Kind of that kind of difference.
Inevitably, your users will find a way to do something you never thought they should or could have done. Like, how did you even get there?
Yeah.
You ever see that TikTok with the like the shape matching puzzle where the kid's putting, shape? It's that thing, right?
Yes.
Like, oh, the triangle goes in the triangle. No, it goes in the square. Oh, everything goes in the square. Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've not seen that, but that sounds fantastic.
Oh, I'll post it later.
Yes.
It's hilarious.
That's awesome.
Awesome. All right. Well, it looks like you all did really great work this week again. So yay.
Well done.
Just let us know once you get things cleaned up and ready, and we can jump in and kind of do a final pass over for you, see if there's anything that spots out. To answer the other question, though, I'm not sure whether there might be an advantage to merging the branches together and testing it through the whole criteria as one before you throw it into main and kind of put it with everything else. I'm not sure. I think I could go either way on that as far as what you guys feel comfortable and confident with. I know in regards to the PRs, if you open up two, you'll want to make sure that only one of them states that it closes the issue and have that be the second one that you merge in.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I think we got lucky on naming a variable the same name, but that was just pure happen chance. But I think there's probably some things that need adjusted before both of them get merged to main.
Yeah, I think it's just more, it's also kind of, you're likely to have some merge conflicts between your branches, but then potentially also, I don't know, with I guess maybe not with master at that point, because nothing else has gone in since then. So
And how would you, I guess, bring it together first before bringing it up to main?
You would pull the secondary branch into whoever was going to take that on. So you would pull the other branch onto your local, and then merge them
Okay.
together on your local, and then send that branch. So you would merge. So you would merge. Let's say you were doing it, then you would take Mandy and Shalom's branch, and you would pull that down, and then you would merge that into your branch, and then send your branch
Okay.
up as a PR.
Got it.
Oh, okay.
I think because we already have one PR open, it might be easier to do that.
Good try. Be good. Good test.
Yeah. And reach out if you have any issues as well.
I mean, the nice thing is if you push them both up on remote, like worst case, you just have to blow everything out local and pull it all back down again. So you
Right.
can't really break it too bad once you've pushed up and you have your copy up in remote. All right.
Does it mean it's retro time?
I think it
does.
is.
Yes.
Yay.
All right. So pretty much there's just the way that I like doing retros is that there's just a couple questions that we're going to just talk about. And usually I'm a note taker, but just since the first time doing it, I'm just going to be the note taker. So the questions that I'm going to ask, just to give you a little preview, are who needs a shout out? So who did something really good, and who needs to be recognized for that? How'd you feel coming out of the cycle? What worked well? What could be improved? And then anything else you want to bring up. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about right now. So first, who needs a shout out? Who did something awesome this cycle? This is kind of the week 1, 2, and now kind of 3 as well, retro. It's a little odd.
I'm going to shout out both of you. I'm going to be that person for different reasons, because we all learned about reintegrating somebody who's been away from the team for a while, from Jordan, his experience. And I didn't work directly with him, but when we got together earlier this afternoon to review things, it didn't seem like he skipped a beat and showing me his work and talking about it, or what him and Fatima did today or throughout the week. And Fatima is just excellent to pair with. Like, that's why I'm shouting out. Whenever the rest of us are like, I don't know what to do, Fatima knows what to do. So she's amazing to pair with. That's my shout out.
Awesome.
Jordan, I see you got your hand up there. Oh, Jonathan?
Yeah, I'm not sure if mentors are able to participate. I assume.
Do it.
Yes.
Go for it.
Awesome. I just want to shout out Mandy for asking those like really meta questions. I think that are really great questions to ask about like how pair programming works and all that other stuff. So big shout out there.
I think I cut you off there, Jordan.
What's that?
I think I cut you off there earlier.
Oh, yeah, no worries. No, I was just going to echo what Mandy said. Fatima, awesome to work with. She actually like fixed an issue. Like when we paired together, we kind of left it in like a little broken state because like we had something that just like wasn't saving right in local storage, or, you know, working with the database query actually. So she, you know, on her own, like fixed that, I think late last night. So yeah, great job on that. And then, yeah, Mandy too, like Mandy, I think she's like the queen of like database now, you know, a resident expert in like Firebase. So any questions we have, I think, you know, we've been going to her and she's, you know, doing great like research on, you know, learning Firebase. So
I want to give a shout out to Mandy. Mandy is like the one that usually like takes like the initiative, like when we're not like really unsure with things, like she kind of helps us, like steers us to like go in the right direction. You also did a really great job with the database stuff and fixing the issue with that infinite loop. That must have been pretty difficult to do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jordan, you did really good, and like after like not being here a week, picking everything back up, it was like you were never missing.
Thank you.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys all saying well. So now this is kind of a slightly loaded question because we're in week 3 of 2. So did we reach our goals for this cycle? Why or why not?
With
Any thoughts?
conditions, yes, we reached our goals.
Okay. Can you expand a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, having Jordan gone changed the amount of work we were able to do, and I think we navigated that well. We probably could have done a better job planning for that absence maybe ahead of time, but it wasn't too problematic to change our trajectory as we went because we weren't sure how much we would be able to do or how quickly it would happen. So, you know, I would like to have our branches merged already, but it's okay that they're not because we still met the acceptance criteria. So yes, with conditions, I feel like we met everything.
Jordan and Fatima, do you guys agree with that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think like our progress has been a little bit slow, but I think like for all of us being in different time zones, we're actually doing like a pretty good job in like making the time to setting aside time to meet with each other. But I think going ahead, I think things will probably be a little bit better now since like we're probably gonna have like the pairing schedules. Yeah.
All right, well,
Yeah,
then since you're go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say no real comments. I agree with everything they said.
I was going to say, since Fatima, you're the last person talking, I'll pick on you. But now, Fatima, I'm still going to pick on you because you come first in the alphabetical order. How do you feel coming out of this cycle? Do you feel happy, pleased? Are you stressed? Do you feel behind? Do you feel anxious? What are your feelings right now?
I feel pretty happy. I enjoy working with every person. Working with every person is like a different dynamic. And I feel like that's like a really good practical experience to have. And I've enjoyed working with each person too.
How do you feel?
Sorry, I didn't get that last.
Oh, sorry, I said awesome, thank you. Jordan, how do you feel?
Yeah, no, I feel good. I think we have like really good progress on this app. It's looking good, coming together. And I would say like maybe I feel a little bit behind, obviously, because I took a couple weeks on vacation. So I feel like maybe I don't have like the I guess the knowledge of like Firebase that maybe some of the others have just from like working with it over the last couple of weeks. So that's something I definitely want to like read up on and kind of get on that level on my end. But I also want to say too, like I kind of missed this in the shout out, but like thanks for like to the whole team for like when I was out, just like getting this like far, and this much like progress. So big thank you for allowing me to kind of go on vacation and come back and be able to work on it when I get back. So thank you.
And Mandy, how are you feeling coming out of all this last cycle?
Yeah, I feel really good. I agree with Fatima. Working with each person has been its own experience, and kind of getting back to what Jonah mentioned earlier, the meta experience has been really awesome because you get to have a safe space to go through the motions in a way, ask those questions and not feel too self-conscious about it, before we get into a work situation where we actually are facing this. So I appreciate that. I think the boost in confidence it's hard to measure. So, and I agree with Jordan, you all deserve a shout out for that, for being our sounding board and answering all of our questions and, you know, reinforcing that the experiences and the self-doubt sometimes is normal, you know, well, it's always kind of to have that, but you know, it's not just a matter of being a newbie, it's just how do you work with other people really. So thank you.
Yeah, so that kind of, you kind of already touched on this in a bunch of ways, but generally for this last cycle, what has worked really well for you guys? What has allowed you to be successful? Were there tactics that you found were effective? What do you want to keep doing this upcoming cycle? What are you going to do again? I've heard quite a bit of conversation about pairing, for instance.
Yeah. I like having the subtasks to guide our work because the, like you mentioned earlier, the acceptance criteria can be not concise, I guess, in a way. Like it's not a step-by-step. So being able to have that, it's not really pseudocode, but kind of going through like, well, what would I need to hit each bullet point and writing that out first helps a lot. Because yeah, whether you're able to pair or not can vary from week to week. So being able to be like, hey, I'll tick off these boxes and then maybe we'll pair tomorrow and we can show each other what we did and then move on from there. I think that's been really helpful.
Awesome. Did anything else work really well for the last little bit? Anything you want to keep doing or?
Yeah, I guess like just like you said, like pairing has been like great. You know, just being able to, even if it's like just playing with like a possible solution, like there's no harm, you know, everyone like has like an open mind. No one's like pushing for like, no, let's just do it this way, you know, and not like explore. So very easy, you know, like when we were pairing just a couple days ago, Fatima, like, you know, starting on like one like handle submit and then they're like, that's not gonna work. Let's like try to think again, you know, and kind of like work that way. So pair is just like super natural and easy. So that's been great.
Cool. All right, well then the inverse. What could be improved? What didn't really work so well? What do you want to stop doing and not do again?
I think like the way that we've been doing things so far has been going smoothly, but there's always room for improvement. Like I think for myself, I think I could communicate better like updates and be more clear.
Can you expand on better? What does better mean to you?
Oh, just like if I update like whatever the information I give is like understandable and clear. And yeah, I think also thinking more about like the edge cases would be useful too.
And how do you want to address those? Like, how do you want to allow for more clear communication?
I think doing it at the beginning, maybe having like one meeting at the beginning with all four of us would be pretty good to do. Kind of just talk about like things like the tasks ahead or just bring up anything, any issues.
And how do you want to address the thinking about edge cases?
Sorry, I didn't get that last.
So you mentioned that you want to think more about edge cases. So how do you want to go about doing that? How can you help ensure that that actually happens this upcoming cycle?
Probably just add it to our process of like when we're creating, like looking at the acceptance criteria and making a subtask list. Also like add looking at possible edge cases, but then also like while we're programming, just like think about the edge cases too while we're coding.
Anything else you guys want to Anything else that didn't really work so well that you want to try fix this cycle?
I think on my end, maybe like just like time zones. Maybe we could like, not that it like didn't work. Like there was no like big issue or anything, but just like I know like I'm on Central. I think Mandy's in like Mountain, and then like Pacific. So maybe like better just like scheduling and whatnot, because sometimes I know like the time can like get too late or too early for some. So maybe we can like schedule ahead like 1 hour a day and kind of just like have it in the calendar. But suggestion.
So how do you want to go about creating that better time zone alignment? Because time zones are hard.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe in that like oh no, I was gonna say like maybe in that initial meeting with all 4 of us, we can kind of decide we want to do like tackle it 1 hour per day, or like does one day work better, and kind of just have it like set in stone at the beginning of each week. But up to suggestions too.
Just regarding the initial meeting, my suggestion would be to create a doodle of times that you guys like. So you can try to find a mutual time, otherwise it gets a little more complicated, but that's just my 2 cents.
Definitely.
April, looks like you almost want to say something.
No, I guess I'm just more thinking along the lines of, async is your friend, and as much as you can do asynchronously is just helps everybody. And sometimes that means splitting off and maybe only actually pairing for like an hour because of time lapse. But each of you maybe put in a half an hour to an hour prior to that you bring to the table, so that you can just kind of coordinate and fine tune things, or just making sure that you're communicating through the channels in Slack with everybody, as far as like, here's what we're thinking about this data structure. Does that work for the work you're doing? Those kind of things. It feels often, and I often find myself in this trap, that it would be so much easier just to have a phone call about this. But in some ways, the asynchronous is actually better because it forces you to write it down so that everybody has a reference that they can go back to. Oh yeah, that's right, that's what we decided on, instead of trying to just recall it from the conversation. So it may mean that finding ways that you can weave more asynchronous communication in would benefit you guys across the time zone issues.
Yeah, that's a great point.
You also mentioned, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, that's a great point. I like that.
Yeah, that actually made that made me think like that normally I think you would want to like update some documentation as you add new features, and that's not been a part of our workflow. But I think that could help, even if we were just drafting little bits of documentation along the way. That could help clarify our thoughts and solidify the direction of things. Like, we got very lucky that we chose the same variable names for things this week, but I wouldn't want to leave that normally to just chance.
Yeah, I agree. Jonathan brought up a good point in regards to doing video too, and making like screencasts of what you're seeing, and then putting that out there, and then individuals could take a look at it when they have a moment, instead of having to find a settled time. And also, you can use your PRs in that if you're working on something, and then you can push up the work you did and then write a comment on the PR. Here's as far as I got. Here's the things that were working. Here's the things that still need to get, adjusted, or that are giving me the wrong return values, or whatever the case may be. And then your partner can pick it up from there.
Yeah, like little status updates.
Mm-hmm. Especially while it's in draft form.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to echo that, what April said about leveraging GitHub, because comments on the issues, comments on your PRs, so useful, so helpful for working asynchronously. If I look at the repo here and our regular work repo, which is a lot of async work, the biggest difference is the number and volume of comments and details that are put in GitHub. So like normally we have lists of comments and conversations, and those are really effective because then when you have time to look at it, you can, and all the details and context is right there. So yeah. Oh, you mentioned breaking apart the conversations into subtasks. Awesome. Comments, I think, as well are going to be your friend.
Yeah, I noticed while Jordan was gone, we defaulted to kind of chatting in a separate Slack DM with each other, and that would not really be ideal to capture like our thinking along the way in the conversation, the ongoing conversation as we're solving a problem. So less Slack DMs and more open communication.
Yeah,
It can
and
be
that
on the
gives us a
issue.
chance. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say those comments can be made on the issue too, instead of an actual PR, just a progress and questions, particularly if it's about the issue as a whole. And then, just making sure that everybody's aware that to be looking for pings on those issues so that they come in and comment.
Yeah, and like exactly that. If it's in a public space, that gives other people an opportunity to potentially weigh in on a potential direction. So instead of spending like double the amount of time trying to go down this wrong road, you can have one person come in with a comment or a resource that helps steer you in the right direction. So much better than keeping everything in a DM.
All right. Is there anything else you guys want to bring up? Anything that we haven't touched on? Anything else you want to address?
No, I think that's
All right.
great.
Well, then I will shamelessly say, how are we doing as mentors? Is there anything we can do to support you guys? How can we be more helpful and help you kind of be successful? Yes, you can be mean.
I'm thinking.
All right. Well, no pressure. You also can tell us anytime or in private. There's no pressure to do it in a public forum, publication forum like this. But yeah, that's all I had really planned for retro.
Love it.
Fantastic.
Maybe like as a takeaway for mentors, maybe we can post these questions because this is the first retro, so maybe we can post these questions ahead of time for the next ones, just to give you time to think about
Good point.
the answers as well. That can be a mentor takeaway.
Agreed.
Well, very cool. So this is the bonus extendo weekly sync. So we can jump straight into the issue. We can jump straight into the pair programming topic and then potential issues after that. Are you cool with that, April?
Yeah, that works for me.
Awesome. How does everyone feel though? I know we've been talking for like a little bit. Do we need like a drink break, need to step away or anything like that? Everyone's good?
I'm good.
I'm going to pop for a washroom break, but yes, otherwise I'm good.
Great. Awesome. Well, while Graham's doing that, let me get my screen going.
You can start the module without me. Don't worry.
Awesome. This actually is kind of nice that we talked about this in the retro because yeah, we'll be talking about pair programming, which is always gonna be fun. Let me share the right tab. All right, think we're good. All right, so let's talk about pair programming. Let me know if you can't see my screen, but I think it's all good. So it's kind of interesting because we've all done pair, like this is like the third week, so everyone's kind of done pair programming by now. And you've also done, I guess, a more advanced type of programming, like with the mob programming, where there's multiple people working on one thing. So, yeah, all of this is kind of focused more on the pairing side, but I think that is some takeaways that you can kind of bring into that mob programming mentality. But we could talk a little bit about the roles. And I know Mandy's kind of asked about this already. But the main roles in pair programming is a driver and a navigator. And you can think of this as like, I'm not sure if you have seen like the rally car driving, where you have the driver focusing on turning the steering wheel, pressing the gas and the brake pedals. And then you have the navigator who's reading out the directions and like turn left or turn right. That's really kind of how we could approach pair programming in developing, like in code. So the driver is focusing on the low-level thoughts about the code. They're controlling the keyboard. They're responsible for writing the code. They need to they need in order to complete the task. And this person also tries to verbalize their thinking process as much as possible as they code. That's obviously easier said than done, but yeah, it's nice to be able to talk through that code that you're writing. And then the navigator itself is paying close attention to the code, seeing where the code is going, but they're really more offering guidance, suggesting alternatives, and then potentially finding answers or looking up things for upcoming questions and challenges. Like maybe they're trying to find the right syntax or something, and that's something that the navigator can do and then relay back to the driver. And they can also act as a sounding board for ideas that the driver's coming up with. And they're really thinking of like the high level roadmap, kind of, what the destination of the code is and where potentially things are going. I'm not sure if you've like had this experience when you're like writing like an essay or something, because you could be so focused on the next sentence where you're just really in the weeds and you kind of lose track of like what you're actually trying to do in the first place. That's where the navigator kind of really helps step in and be like, hey, this is great. Let's maybe like focus on this other direction potentially, or, like you're more focused on the next line and they might be more focused on like the general function or general structure. There's also a definition of pair programming, which I think is great in the office. I think there's probably more remote pair programming going on these days. But the kind of original definition was two developers sitting in front of a computer, taking turns writing code using just one keyboard. Obviously, that's a little bit different with remote programming. So let's quickly chat about that. So there's plenty of tools out there, and you all have done it already. So I don't think I need to talk too much about the tools. But the general process is two developers hop on a video share screen call, so just starting from top left. And then the driver shares a screen and codes while the navigator provides feedback and asks questions. And then the driver pushes the code to the remote repo and navigator pulls down that code locally. And the driver and navigator swap roles and start back at step one. Now that last point is actually really important. It might feel nice when you get into a groove with someone to just stay as a driver and that other person stays as a navigator. But it's really important to be able to swap roles and get a chance to work on that low level code. And then as the driver to kind of like flip the switch and work on that kind of high level concepts and thinking about like where the code's going. Now you don't need to do this too often. Like it doesn't need to be every commit where you swap driver and navigator. You kind of want to find what works best with you, but you do want to do it in a regular occurrence. So I think that's like a really important point to call out there. And then the last bit that we'll talk about is just the mindset and attitude. So pairing is an exercise in sharing a Lego, and it can be more efficient to go with your pairing partner's idea than to argue on an approach. And then, from hearing your comments in retro, it doesn't seem like you guys are arguing on people's approaches. I think it's really important to come in with a beginner's mind when you're pairing. So embracing that impossibility. I think Jordan, you mentioned like you and Fatima went down this path of handling a submit form or something like that, and that ended up not being the right approach and trying something different. I think that's a really good thing to keep in mind. Is like it's about exploring and to seeing like what doesn't work, what does work. Now it's not about teaching or mentorship. It seems kind of weird because ultimately when you're pairing, you learn a lot. There's so many opportunities to learn when you're pairing. So it's kind of weird that it's like specifically not teaching or mentorship. But the idea is pairing is working on a problem to get a solution. So you're like trying to push code out, you're trying to solve a PR, you're trying to like finish this issue. That is kind of the ultimate goal of pairing, is to get something done. Not saying there's no opportunity to learn there. There's definitely times when I've like needed to kind of step back and learn a concept or teach a concept to someone else. And that's kind of when you would put a pause to the pairing aspect and like kind of look at exploring some other, maybe we give a talk to each other, or like maybe we'll run some other demo code, and then we come back to the pairing. So it's kind of a weird thing where it's like, it's not about teaching mentorship, but it is about kind of teaching pairing. And then 2 points on the driver and the navigator roles. So the drivers are seeking agreement before proceeding. So like I said before, you never want to code in silence. You never just want to like push out stuff without saying anything. It's always good to have those communication lines open. So, you know, this is like making sure that your the naming, like even the naming is like a really important thing to talk about. Like make sure the naming makes sense. Are the functions, you know, looking good, all that stuff, and maybe talking through what your approach is or what you're thinking of is also really important to have as well, because for the navigator, that's how they fit everything into their mental model and how they see the roadmap. And for the navigators, you're asking about approaches and you're not telling someone what to do. Early on in my career, I've definitely had a senior developer just like tell me what code to write. And at that point, it's like, why pair? Like, that's like, why not just write the code? So I think having that like conversation and that dialogue open is like, that's a huge benefit of pairing. And I think the last point that's not on here, but both pairs and need to keep in mind is energy levels. Pairing is really tiring, at least for me, it's really tiring. I think it's important to have that almost like boundaries where you say, I have this much amount of time. We want to work on like these specific topics, but having an idea of like where potentially you could take a break and how you can measure progress is important during pairing, because yeah, it can be a really tiring process. So that's actually all the slides, and I'd love to hear about your experience. You know, if the Collabbies want to go first, and then maybe mentors if there's time. I know you talked about it already, so if we don't need to rehash these experiences, we definitely just jump straight to the issues as well. So I'll leave it here. Let me know, Collabbies, what your thoughts are.
I feel like we elaborated on our pairing quite a bit earlier.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. Do mentors have any pairing stories they want to share? Like anything comes to mind? Otherwise, we could jump straight to issues.
I think the biggest thing for me is that it took a little while for me to get confident enough to be a driver without being nervous about it. It was definitely a lot more comfortable to be the navigator and to watch particularly senior devs kind of work and just input questions and things from that distance. But I do know that in those moments when I am the driver, like it is very helpful, and it has helped me to like be better. So, you know, jumping into that uncomfortable space is important too.
Yeah, I'd love to echo that. It's great being the driver when you don't know what to do, because then you have a navigator to show you where to go.
Yes, definitely. Well,
That's a
also,
question.
Pairing when stuck.
oh, question.
Yeah. So as a professional developer, like, do you often find like you build in prep time and you know that your pairing sessions are you know, when you know they're on your schedule? Or is that something that becomes like less of a need to do over time as you gain experience, like either in your code base or, you know, your problem space that you're working in? Because I feel like that's what makes me feel, I guess, like I'm still a newbie, is that I feel like I have to do quite a bit of prep to feel comfortable driving, especially.
I think for me, I think initially when I first started, prep time was something that I spent more time on. But nowadays, if I don't know an area of code base, like even if I don't have like context, I'll jump in asking to be the driver, because for me, that's like the best way to learn. Like I can ask those, I guess, dumb questions and have the navigator help me find my way through the code base. But yeah, that's how I approach it. I don't know if that's the thing.
A lot of the
In a
pairing
professional
that I do is more impromptu and focused around either trying to solve an issue in a I guess, quicker time frame, like by getting somebody who has a bit more experience either with that concept or that code, or working through something that's not working when, you know, the expectation is that it would. So a little bit more problem solving, and so it's a little bit different dynamic, and it's not scheduled. It's more of a, hey, do you have time this afternoon, or are you available right now, is kind of the pattern that I have in my workday.
Yeah, to echo that as well, I would argue that in a professional context, it's less of pairing to pair, more pairing for help. So the preparation time is almost built in there, because for instance, I'll be working on a project for a long time and I've got all the context I've prepared, but then I'm stuck. And so I might have tried to work on the project, on the problem, and I can't get it. And then I'll grab a driver or grab a navigator to come give me a hand, and then I'll access my rubber duck and a second pair of eyes and all that stuff. And so that way, kind of the preparation's already done. The other context is when you're kind of exploring a new issue. So let's say you're trying to theorize, how should we go about solving this problem? And you want to experiment with code. And that way, yes, I would argue that myself and the person that I'm pairing with are both going to take some preparation time to think about, okay, how do we want to go about doing this? And then when we have the time together, we are prepared with our ideas.
Thanks, that makes sense.
Question in full. Yeah.
Any other questions? Great. Well, I'll stop sharing and I'll hand it over to April.
All right. I have too many windows open. All right, let me share just so we're all looking at the same thing. And so last week we just did the one issue, and that isn't yet closed out. So we're going to leave that in progress. And the issue that we're taking on for this week would be issues 6 and issue 7. And we'll go through, start at issue 6. As a user, I want to be alerted when an item that is in the same, when I'm entering an item that is the same as something already on my list, so I can avoid duplicate items. The acceptance criteria is to show an error message if the user tries to submit a new item that has the exact same name as an existing item. Show an error message if the user tries to submit a new item that has the same name as an existing item where capitalization has been normalized and punctuation has been removed. And if the user's original input should be what gets saved in the database. Does that all make sense? Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess just on this third point, just to clarify, is that, you know, if they put in a capital A apple and you're going to normalize it to check for the existing items, but then the item should display with that capitalization that they originally had.
Yeah, so should we, okay, that's an interesting problem to solve. I'm gonna think on it longer.
Okay. All right, and then issue 7. As a user, I want to see a welcoming prompt to add my first item if my list is empty, to help me get oriented to how the app works. And the acceptance criteria for this is that the list view, when there are no items to display, should show a prompt, for example, a button, for the user to add their first item. The wireframe is a little short on the welcoming part of the story, but otherwise is functionally complete for the purposes of the acceptance criteria. We can look at that here. Which is, for this case, they just put a simple button to add an item. And I guess just if that's pretty straightforward, or if there's any questions there.
Yeah, I guess I have a question. So right now, like if there's no token or the list is empty, it's like has a form that you can like input a token, but on that like wireframe, it doesn't really show that. So if they don't have a token in and therefore there's no items on their list, are we supposed to be showing like the, you can submit a token here or create a new token, or how does that kind of come together?
As I understand the acceptance criteria to this point, they shouldn't be able to see the list unless they have a token. So if they go to the, the /list URL, they should be redirected back to the home page unless they have a token.
Okay, so this is when they click like create list, then that wireframe is where this is what we're building here. Okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
Thanks.
Or if somebody had a token and nobody had added anything to it, then yes, this is what your list page would look like.
Okay, perfect.
All right, and then the pairs this week. I actually forgot to look at that one. And we are on week, so technically week 4 here, right? Yes. So it's Fatima and Shalom, and Jordan and Mandy. So do either of you on those teams have preferences for which of those issues you want to tackle, either issue 6 or issue 7? If not, then I'll go ahead and just do it as a 1, 2, 6, 7. With Fatima and Shalom doing issue 6 and Jordan and Mandy doing 7. Are we good with that?
Sounds good.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sticking around for the extra long weekly sync this week.
Wasn't too bad, right? 10 minutes over.
I know, we did
10
pretty
minutes
good.
over. I know, yes. Yeah, I think it helped when the retro talked about the pair programming experiences. Like, okay, great. That's like half of my presentation.
I know.
Very true.
And I think Graham, you have office hours this week, is that right? Method rotation.
You're muted.
Oh, yep. Sorry, Graham, you're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, so let's see. Yes, I have office hours.
Cool.
Well,
Awesome.
put up a note of when we want to have that. Your
Perfect.
choices, by the way, are Tuesday and Thursday.
Fantastic. Well, that's it.
All right. So I'll go ahead and get those threads opened up in Slack for those 2 issues, since we're back on the dual pairs, and y'all can start getting things set up that way. If you wanted to set up something independently with all of you to do kind of an overview, feel free to do that in the Slack channel as well.
I do have one question actually. So before our next sync next Sunday, are you looking for us to have, I guess, the final like pull requests out there, or is there kind of like I guess
For the demos, it would be ideal if you can have your work merged into main and be using the actual, like all the pieces put together.
okay, so yeah, already accepted pull requests, like already merged into main. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, that you would just be demoing off of the main branch with your piece.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any concerns with that? Like, it seems doable.
Yeah, no, I think it does. I just, I wasn't sure like at what level we need to be at, like at the sync,
Gotcha.
It makes sense. Like you would want to have it.
Yeah, ideally the cadence for the program is like the first part of the week is, the heavy coding, and then the second half of the week is the reviews and revisions, and then the final day or so is putting it all together, getting it into main, and preparing for the demo.
Okay. Makes sense.
All right.
Cool.
Fantastic. Well, have a lovely week. I'll see you in Slack, and Same time, same place
See
next
you
year.
in office hours.
Then.
Thanks so much.
All right,
Thank
bye all.
you.